Have you ever loved someone who was just there to keep you from feeling alone? Not to truly love you, but to protect yourself from your own emptiness? Some men don't love, they just cling to what alleviates their loneliness. And when the relief ends, they disappear. When you demand depth, they flee. But in the meantime, you keep believing it's love. Rumi said, "You were born with wings, why do you insist on crawling for the affection of someone who can't fly? What you feel inside may not even be love anymore. Maybe it's the echo of a hope that never came true. Maybe it's attachment to something that once promised you everything, and now only gives you crumbs. And yet you stay, you wait, you surrender, because your soul wants to love, while his just wants to numb the pain. This is the dark secret no one tells you. Not every man who seeks you and is ready to love you. Some just use you as a mirror to avoid facing their own loneliness. And this is not about your weakness. This is about how we were taught to confuse intensity with love, control carefully, momentary presence with true affection. You feel it, don't you? That lump in your throat, that feeling that something is wrong, but you can't quite put your finger on it, because he says he likes you. He comes back when you disappear. He responds when you walk away, but it's never complete. It never dives with you. And you ask yourself, is it me? Am I asking too much? Is this really what love is? This coming and going? This butterflies in your stomach? This wait that never ends? No, that's not love. That's attachment. And attachment is what arises when a wounded soul meets another wounded soul. And instead of healing, they make a pact for survival. You feel this because your soul is tired of giving where there is no reciprocity. Because true love liberates, it does not imprison. He gives himself up. He doesn't hold on. It builds. It doesn't suck. But attachment demands. It demands. It expects you to fill holes that aren't yours. May it heal wounds you did not cause. May he be strong when he can't even be present. And it hurts. It hurts because you have a spiritual heart. It hurts because you see his soul, even when he only sees his needs. Maybe he's not bad. Maybe he's just too hurt to love you. But that doesn't change the truth. He's not loving you. He's just clinging. And what begins as attachment ends as emptiness. But what about you? Will you continue to confuse presence with love? Or will you finally listen to what your soul is trying to say? Comment below. I know the difference between love and attachment. This video will show you what no one ever told you about this silent pain. Stay with me, because now we're going to go even deeper. What you will hear here is not what they say out there. It's not about playing emotional games. It's not about making him chase. It's about wake up, on finally understanding why you attract this kind of empty love and why you keep staying. This video is not entertainment. It's a mirror, and maybe it's painful to see yourself in it, but it could also be the key to breaking the cycle that keeps you tied to the almost, to the lukewarm, to the half-love. If this has touched something inside you, if any word described you without me knowing you, then this message is yours. You didn't get here by accident, your soul asked to hear this, so before we continue, breathe, sit down. And if this video has already spoken to you, leave your like. This is not just a click, it is a confirmation. I deserve a love that chooses me completely. Subscribe to the channel. Here, each video is a dive, a healing, a conversation with your pain, and with your light. Now let me show you why this pain you feel. Maybe it's not even about him, but about something invisible that lives inside you. And that's when everything starts to change. Have you ever wondered why you feel empty even when you're with someone? Have you ever looked around and felt their physical presence but a glaring emotional absence? It's like being accompanied on the surface and completely alone in your soul. There's a pain that has no name, a silence between two bodies that feels like an abyss. And this emptiness doesn't come from a lack of love in you. It comes from the other person's lack of surrender, because what they feel for you may not be love, but merely an attachment to the comfort of being cared for, a desire for presence but not for depth, a fear of abandonment, but not the courage for true involvement. You're giving love, surrendering yourself, building an emotional bridge. But him? He's just protecting himself. He avoids his own pain through his surrender. He leans on your strength, feeds on your affection, but never dives in with you. He doesn't love. He finds solace in you. And this is more common than you think. Men who haven't learned to love, but have learned to survive. And in this survival, they mistake the warmth of your care for the love they never learned to feel. While you ask yourself, what else can I do? He wonders, will she abandon me like everyone else? The problem is he doesn't see you. He sees the role you play. He sees the relief you offer, the attention that soothes his anxiety, the affection that distracts his pain. But he doesn't see your soul. He doesn't touch your essence. He doesn't recognize your surrender as something sacred, because true love requires presence, spiritual presence, and he's not there. He's just trying not to sink while you swim for two. Maybe you think that if you give a little more, give in a little more, wait just a little longer, he'll change, that one day he'll notice, that at some point he'll wake up. But what no one told you is that love doesn't grow in a heart that's still closed inside. You can be a light, but you can't force someone to open their eyes. You can be a home, but you can't force anyone to stay. The invisible problem is this: you give yourself to someone who doesn't know what to do with what you offer, because they don't want love, they want relief. And when you don't deliver that relief, it disappears. It grows cold. It distances itself. And then you enter a crisis, because you start to believe that the problem is you, that maybe you're hard to love, that maybe you're demanding too much, that maybe love really needs to be like this, full of doubts, silences, and disagreements. But no, love isn't that. Love isn't absence masquerading as presence. Love isn't a unilateral effort. Love isn't what makes you restless. Love is what calms you, what grounds you, what sustains you even when everything seems to be falling apart. But how do you know the difference between love and attachment? It's simple. Love nourishes, attachment drains. Love liberates, attachment binds. Love offers, attachment demands. Love looks into your eyes and remains. Attachment avoids, hides, conceals itself. And the cruelest thing about all this is that often you get used to this type of relationship because it repeats an old pattern. Perhaps something you experienced in childhood, an absence you learned to normalize, a love you always had to earn. That's why it hurts so much, because it's not just about him. It's about all the times you had to beg to be seen, all the times you felt invisible, small, insufficient. And when he shows up with the smallest gestures, with crumbs of affection, with specific messages, you cling, because your heart still hopes, because your soul still believes, because your story still seeks a different ending. But you need to know, some men don't love. They just cling. They cling to what makes them feel less alone, less lost, less broken. And in the process, they break you. But you weren't born to live patching yourself up. You were born whole. You were born to love and be loved in equal measure, to be seen deeply, touched with truth. You were born to be more than someone's solace, more than a comfortable respite from a man's traumas, more than a temporary shelter for souls on the run. And if it hurts now, if you feel like something inside you is being ripped apart, maybe it's because you're starting to see beyond the desire to be loved, to see with the eyes of your soul. And that's scary, but it's also freeing, because once you see, you can't unsee. And that's where the healing begins, not with him, but with you. If this excerpt touched something inside you, write here in the comments, "I am no one's relief," because this sentence could be the beginning of something new. You need to understand a truth no one likes to face. Attachment is not love. It's fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of facing one's own emptiness. Fear of feeling what has been hidden for so long. Attachment is a form of anesthesia, not affection. It's an emotional survival instinct disguised as affection. And often, it feels so much like love that you don't realize the difference until you're already hurt, until you've lost yourself trying to be everything to someone who doesn't even know who they are. And the cruelest thing about all this is that this type of bond forms precisely when there's an old wound, an emotional hunger that has never been satisfied, an emotional hole that stems from childhood, from absence, from a lack of belonging. You think you're in love, but deep down you're trying to fill a silence that isn't even yours. You're trying to prove that you're worthy of being chosen, that you're enough, that you're good enough to be loved unconditionally. And in this quest, you lose yourself. You start accepting less than you deserve. You start keeping quiet so as not to disturb. You start molding yourself to what the other person needs, while stifling what you feel. All this to keep someone who isn't whole, someone who won't give themselves, Someone who's only there because they're afraid to face their own loneliness. Rumi said, "What you seek, seeks you." But what happens when what he seeks isn't you? What happens when he's just looking for an escape, a hiding place, a place to rest and forget his own pain? That's not love. It's an unconscious agreement between two wounded souls. One offers care, the other revels in the relief. And you enter this cycle of giving, waiting, getting frustrated, and then trying again. Because you still believe you can fix it. Because you still hope that love will prevail. But love isn't born of necessity. Love doesn't blossom in a place of flight. True love doesn't require you to hurt yourself to keep someone close. And that's why it's so important to look within now. Because what keeps you trapped in this kind of relationship isn't just what he does. It's what you feel when he's not there. It's what's activated within you when he pulls away. It's the pain of being left, ignored, rejected. And this pain isn't just about him. It has deep roots. Roots you may never have looked at closely. Maybe you grew up feeling like you needed to do something more to be loved. Maybe you learned to try too hard, to give too much of yourself, to keep yourself too quiet. Maybe you understood way back when that to avoid being abandoned, you had to be perfect. And now in adulthood, this pattern repeats itself because the soul attracts what needs healing. You connect with men who aren't ready because deep down you're still trying to resolve something within yourself. You're still trying to be chosen by someone, the way you wish you had been in the past. And here's the spiritual root. What hurts now isn't just his absence. It's your own absence. It's how far you've distanced yourself from your essence to be loved by someone who doesn't even love themselves. It's how much you've betrayed your feelings, your desires, your limits, all to avoid being left. But the truth is, every time you accept less than you deserve, you're the one leaving yourself. You're the one abandoning yourself. You're the one unconsciously reinforcing the belief that love is scarcity, pain, and waiting. And it isn't. Love begins when you stop chasing after those who don't even have themselves. When you stop offering healing to those who insist on remaining sick. When you realize your soul is begging for silence, for pause, for liberation. Not because you no longer love, but because you've understood that loving can no longer mean sacrificing your peace. And that is an awakening, a spiritual awakening. The awareness that the pain you feel isn't caused solely by him, but by an ancient expectation that someone will come and rescue you, but no one will save you. And do you know why? Because you're not lost. You're just disconnected from yourself. You're trying to find in someone else what already lives within you. Love, presence, value, security. But these treasures can only be accessed when you stop looking for them outside. When you understand that the other only reflects what you believe about yourself. And if you believe you only deserve pieces, that's what you'll attract. But if you start treating yourself as something sacred, the universe responds. Connections change, encounters transform. And from this point on, it's no longer about him. It's about you. How willing you are to see yourself through the eyes you used to see him. How ready you are to break out of the cycle of waiting, pain, and return. How prepared you are to break the pattern of clinging to someone who doesn't love you. Because yes, attachment is what happens when two absences meet and try to complete each other. But love is when two presences recognize each other and choose each other, free from fear. If you've come this far and felt that this text touched you, write in the comments, "I choose to see myself." Because sometimes everything starts when you finally decide to see yourself. What no one told you is that true love liberates, attachment imprisons. And perhaps for the first time you're beginning to see this, beginning to realize that what you called a relationship, a connection, an intense passion, was actually a silent kind of prison. A prison with open windows but emotional bars, where you could even smile but always felt an inexplicable tightness in your chest, where you were beside someone, but your soul felt alone, because he didn't see you. He only used your light to escape his own darkness. You're not being loved. You're being used as emotional anesthesia, as an escape, as a sedative for a heart that's never learned to deal with its own pain. And you accept this, not because you don't realize what's happening, but because there's a childlike hope within you that if you give enough, he'll change, that if you love hard enough, he'll wake up, that if you stay present, steadfast, loyal, he'll finally see you. But he doesn't see you. He sees what you represent, a respite, a distraction, a temporary refuge from the wounds he refuses to touch. And this is where the key comes in. the key that changes everything, the key that opens not only the door to this emotional prison, but the gateway to a new way of loving. The key is to distinguish the touch that heals from the touch that merely drains. What heals is light, even when intense. It is deep, even when silent. It nourishes you, even when it challenges you. The touch that heals doesn't create chronic doubts, doesn't alienate you, doesn't make you beg for attention. It calls you home. It reconnects you with what is sacred within you. The touch that heals doesn't demand sacrifice. It demands presence. It doesn't feign depth. It dives with you. But the touch that drains, that's treacherous. It seduces you with vague promises, with intense looks, with words that sound right, but are never followed by consistent actions. It envelops you with gestures that seem like love but carry the weight of fear. Fear of loss, of being alone, of facing one's own darkness. The touch that drains doesn't want to love you. It wants to hide within you. It wants to feel less lost, less inadequate, less broken, at your expense. And all the while you wither away. You diminish yourself to fit into the space it offers. You fade away so it can shine. You silence yourself so it can't escape. You've done this before, haven't you? You've molded yourself, you've hidden yourself, you've kept your truth to yourself so as not to be called an exaggeration. You've postponed your dreams so as not to displease. You've smiled on the outside while crying on the inside. You've stayed silent when you wanted to scream. And all of this out of fear. Fear of losing someone you never had deep down, because they were never there completely. And true love requires wholeness. It requires courage. It requires a mutual willingness to grow, to face the shadows, to walk together even when the path is scary. You need to understand that loving someone who doesn't love themselves is a cycle of endless wear and tear, because you're trying to carry two souls alone. You're trying to keep alive a flame that he doesn't even help ignite. You're trying to build something on shaky emotional ground. And no matter how much you dedicate yourself, how much understanding you have, how much patience you have, love never blossoms where there are no roots. And it didn't take root in you. It just landed, fed, and leaves when the nourishment runs out. It's hard to hear this, I know. It's painful to accept that what you felt was real, but not reciprocated, that you loved deeply, and he only clung to the surface. But this pain can become power, because it forces you to choose between continuing to save someone who doesn't want to be saved, or starting to save yourself, to choose between repeating the cycle of emotional abandonment, or beginning the cycle of healing, to choose between being his anesthesia, or the rebirth of your own soul. And this choice begins with a symbolic act, an internal rupture, a silence that brings you back to yourself, a sigh that says, enough. Enough of convincing yourself that this is the best you can have. Enough of settling for less. Enough of allowing love to be a space of scarcity. Because true love is abundance. It is presence. It is a clean mirror, not smoke. It is recognition, not confusion. It is an altar, not a battlefield. You may be feeling right now a calling within you, a whisper that tells you something needs to change. Not in him, in you. Not to be more lovable, but to remember that you already are love. Not to win someone over, but to find yourself again. Because your soul no longer wants to fight for affection. It wants to rest in peace. It wants to live lightly. It wants to love truthfully. It wants to be seen, touched, chosen with intention. And this is only possible when you free yourself from the illusion that attachment is love. If something in you understood what was just said, comment here. I recognize the touch that heals me. Because when you say this, the universe listens and begins to show you the way. Maybe you're right now with someone who says they love you. Someone who speaks the right words, uses the right gestures, has the sweet tone of voice, and knows exactly how to leave you confused. Because they know how to ignite hope in you, but never sustain it. They disappear when you need depth. They pull away when you try to build something more solid. They create distance just when you're pouring your soul out. And then they come back. They always come back. As if nothing had happened. As if their silence hadn't screamed inside you. As if you hadn't cried entire nights trying to understand what you did wrong. But they come back, not because they love you, but because they feel the weight of their own emptiness. Because they need the warmth you offer, the listening ear you provide, the love you give, but they don't come to stay. They come to relieve themselves. And when they're satisfied, they leave again. And in this silent cycle, you lose yourself. You adapt. You stop asking, stop demanding, stop wanting too much, because you've learned that when you want more, he gives less. When you speak, he becomes silent. When you get closer, he retreats. And for fear of losing him, you begin to nullify yourself. You hide parts of yourself that are beautiful but that he doesn't want to see. You begin to fit the mold of what he tolerates. And therein lies the problem. You're not being loved, you're being tolerated. And no one deserves to live like that. No one deserves to be the one who's convenient but not essential, the one who's useful but not irreplaceable, the one who's sought out in need but left in silence. Maybe he even says he loves you, that he misses you, that you're special. But remember, these words always come when you start to pull away, when you try to protect yourself, when you start to see, because he doesn't want to lose the relief you represent, but he also doesn't want to commit to the depth you deserve. And this leaves you in an emotional limbo. You don't know if you're being loved or used, if you're important or just convenient. And this place, this in-between, this almost, this I don't know, is what destroys you the most. Because he doesn't abandon you completely, but he also never truly chooses you. You begin to live on crumbs. Crumbs of affection, of presence, of connection. You settle for small gestures that should be the bare minimum. You thrill to messages that only arrive after your silence. You smile at encounters that only happen when he wants them to. And inside you, there's a voice screaming, a part of you that knows this isn't love, that this is attachment, that this is fear disguised as desire, that this is an unbalanced exchange where you give everything and receive almost nothing. But you silence that voice, because the idea of losing what little you have scares you more than the possibility of being alone. You've grown accustomed to this dance. He comes, you calm down. He goes, you bleed. He returns, you forgive. And this cycle never stops, because he knows he can come and go. He knows you're always there. He knows you truly love him, and he won't change. Not because he's cruel, but because he doesn't know how to love differently, because he doesn't have the emotional structure to sustain what you offer, because he's still trapped in his own shadows. And the most dangerous thing about all this is that the more you try to prove your worth, the more he sees you as a guarantee, as someone who will always be available. And love, when it becomes a certainty of possession, dies. You deserve to be chosen, not tolerated. Chosen entirely, with all your parts, with your depth, your intensity, your soul. You deserve someone who doesn't fear your light, who doesn't run from your presence, who wants to grow by your side, not just hide. Someone who recognizes you for who you are, and not just what you offer. Because true love doesn't appear only when you walk away. It remains even when coexistence demands effort. It communicates even when there are conflicts. It dives with you, even when the waters are deep. If you're living this story today, it might be hard to admit. Maybe there's still hope inside you that he'll change, that he'll wake up, that he'll realize. But the truth is, no one wakes up in another's time. People only change when they choose to change. And until then, you'll continue giving what he can't sustain. Your soul will continue trying to heal a wound that isn't yours. You'll continue hurting yourself to keep someone whole. And that's not love. That's emotional addiction. That's self-abandonment. That's trying to save the other from an emptiness that only they can face. Maybe it's time to take an honest look at what you're experiencing. To stop convincing yourself that this is the best you can have. To stop normalizing absence, indifference, and the coming and going. Because love isn't that. Love isn't chronic suffering. It isn't constant doubt. It isn't feeling inferior. Love is recognition. It's presence. It's reciprocity. It's mutual healing. And as long as you continue to cling to what diminishes you, you'll be preventing true love from finding you. If you recognized yourself in this cycle, write in the comments, "I deserve to be chosen," because this phrase can be the first step to breaking the pattern and making room for something real. You are not the bandage on his wound. And perhaps this is the harshest yet most liberating sentence you need to hear right now. Because for a long time, perhaps years of your life, you've put yourself in that place. The place of the one who listens, who understands, who welcomes, who waits. The place of the one who silences their pain to carry his. The place of the one who postpones their own processes, their own dreams, their own limits, because they believe that if he gets better, everything will get better. But you're not here to be anyone's patch. You're not anyone's cure. And more than that, you're not responsible for someone who didn't even choose to heal. You are the soul that needs to be chosen entirely, not just in moments of need, not just when he feels lost, not just when his world falls apart and he remembers you were always there. Because this kind of bond isn't love, it's emotional dependence disguised as connection, and you need to start recognizing the value of your presence, the impact of your dedication, the beauty of your soul, because those who truly love you don't just show up when they need you. They stay, they plant, they care, and most importantly, they choose you when they have other options. But to experience this kind of love, you need to go through an internal process that no one can do for you. You need to stop waiting for the other person to change. You need to stop believing that your love will be enough to transform someone who doesn't even want to change. You need to look at yourself with more tenderness, more respect, more truth. Rumi said, "You have to keep breaking your heart until it opens." And maybe this video, these words, this moment right now is another crack toward your freedom. You've been living with a broken heart, but not as something that frees you, but as something that imprisons you, as an endless repetition of pain, silence, and return, as a weight disguised as hope. But now you have the chance to choose differently, to allow this pain to be a turning point, not a repetition of patterns, to let this wound become a portal, not a captivity. Because true love begins when you choose yourself, not as revenge but as reunion, when you decide you no longer want to beg for attention, that you no longer want to be remembered only when the other person is empty, that you no longer want to give everything to someone who only knows how to drain. This is the shift in consciousness. The moment you realize that all this effort, all this insistence, all this one-sided love is not what you deserve. It's just a reflection of an old wound that convinced you needed to sacrifice to be loved. But that's no longer necessary. You no longer need to sacrifice. You no longer need to prove yourself. You no longer need to justify yourself. Because now, your soul is awakening. And this awakening is silent, but profound. It begins with a no to what diminishes you, a no to what consumes you, a no to what no longer aligns with who you are becoming. And from that no, space arises for a yes to your truth, to your lightness, to your emotional healing, to a love that is made of presence, not escape, of construction, not distraction, of commitment, not convenience, a love that feels more like peace than confusion, that brings more clarity than doubt, that flourishes in the light and does not hide in the shadow of need. But this only happens when you stop seeing the other person as your destiny, when you understand that your life doesn't revolve around being chosen. It revolves around remembering who you are, because you're not the absence he tries to fill. You're not the silence he tries to numb. You're not the place he hides. You're the presence, the intensity, the awareness. And even though he can't see you now, that doesn't diminish you. It just proves he still doesn't know what to do with a whole soul. You didn't come into this world to be anyone's respite. You came to be the transformation, the revolution, love in its purest form. And that's scary. It scares those still stuck on the surface. It scares those who live on the run. It scares those who have never learned to truly love. But it's not your role to dim your light so as not to disturb. It's not your role to adapt to someone else's emotional blindness. Your role is to keep shining even when no one's looking, to keep walking even when they stop, to keep growing even when they regress. Because you're not a bandage, you're the cure. And healing sometimes hurts, because it reveals, it exposes, it tears. But after the pain subsides, everything takes on new meaning. You begin to realize that everything you've experienced so far was preparation, that every tear has strengthened you, that every abandonment has taught you to choose yourself, that every silence has brought you closer to your essence. And that's why you're here now, not because you failed at love, but because you're ready to experience a different kind of love. A love that begins with you, that blossoms within you, that blossoms when you look in the mirror and finally see everything you've always sought in someone else. If you felt this shift happening within you, write here in the comments, "I am not the bandage, I am the cure." Because this statement isn't just a sentence, it's the beginning of a new story. If you've made it this far, it's because something inside you has awakened. Maybe it was a wound that finally found a name, or a part of you that grew tired of accepting less than it deserves. What matters now is that you're no longer in the same place you were before, and that's already the beginning of transformation. So before you leave, take a deep breath and remember, your journey doesn't have to be a lonely one. Here, each video is a mirror and a whisper to your soul. If this content spoke to you, subscribe to the channel to continue this path with me. Together we will break cycles and create new stories. Stories of true love, not disguised attachment. If you felt that this video got to you, leave your like. It shows the universe that you're ready for more. And it won't stop there. The next video is already appearing on the screen. Click without fear. It's the spiritual continuation of what you've just begun. Because your soul still has much to remember,